time to get ready for some Commander Legends, Dungeons and Dragons, Battles for Baldur's Gate. A little bit of a tonful, I will say. Though I should probably do some research on this. I think the recent game was Baldur's Gate free. Oh hey, I bought it. Okay, let's see. Let's play this game and see what happens.
3 weeks later.
Oh, that's fun. Let's see, how long was I playing? Oh crap, I need to get another video out. And coincidentally, I need to get the top 10 video out. Let's get this out now, right now. Welcome everybody to the Top Deck Thoughts. I hope you enjoy it. Let's actually talk about some MTG shenanigans from Baldur's Gate. Shall we? Hello everybody, and welcome to the Brewing Labs, or in this case, Top Deck Thoughts. My name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as LeDev. Now, as the intro skit has probably indicated, I kind of accidentally took a mini hiatus for a few weeks and such. Well, not accidentally, I kind of went through a little bit of a mini burnout and such, and just had to recover from that burnout. Nevertheless, though, I did wanted to talk about the MTG shenanigans, especially with this upcoming Commander Legends set, which is Baldur's Gate. Now, clarification, there is a little bit of truth to this. I did try out Baldur's Gate free. Overall, having fun, even though I'm kind of stuck in the temple area because I actually angered the goblins and I'm trying to escape from the goblins. Never anger goblins. Never. Nevertheless, though, this upcoming Commander Legends set does look like a blast to play and draft, and even has some nice new tools for the format. Now, a few clarifications before we get started. 1. This is specifically a supplementary set for Commander. Now, specifically, I'll be talking about these cards and analyzing them from a Commander perspective. If I think a card has a chance for any of the Eternal formats, aka Legacy and Vintage, where these cards will also be legal in, I'll keep that indication in mind, but for the most part, these are just my personal favorite cards that are upcoming from the set. Also, distinction number 2. As stated before, it is my opinion. I just essentially, for those who don't know, I like to do a lot of janky brewing, and you could probably see some cards here that is in more realms of that line. It's not like I'm going to be like the top 10 best cards ever or such. These are just personal favorite cards that I just looked at and I'm like, yep, I want to brew around that card, because I do feel like there's going to be some fun shenanigans. Is some of it powerful? Sure. But is some of it janky? Absolutely. Nevertheless, let's get started first. But before that, let's talk about the honorary mention. Which is, the honorary mention for this time around is actually a nice little bear that came from Baldur's Gate 2, I believe. And that is Wilson, Refined Grizzly. Now, for those who don't know, Wilson Refined Grizzly is a 2-mana 2/2 bear, warrior, for reasons. It has the following abilities. This spell can't be countered. It has Vigilance, it has Reach, it has Trample, and Ward 2. And it has the Choose a Background mechanic. Now, to clarify, the Choose a Background mechanic essentially in this set is a basic mechanic where, basically, if you choose this as your commander, you can choose from a variety assortment of backgrounds, which actually I have a few of them right here because I decided to be prepared this time around. So let's say we wanted to make a Gruul Bear deck, we can actually have Wilson and also Popular Entertainer as our quote-unquote commanders. One of them being the Choose Background commander, and one of them being the quote-unquote legendary background. They are in your commander zone, and they're the color of identities both for the Choose a Background commander and the background you choose for it. Now, as of this recording, and as of when we've seen of the full set, you can only do technically 2-color deck designs or monocolored deck designs with the Choose the Background commanders, as well as the backgrounds that we have got from the set, as well as the pre-con commander decks. However, I just like Wilson because it is probably, with the exception of Irulia, the Queen Bear, essentially, it is kind of one of the best bears we actually got in a while. I mean, 2 mana with all those abilities, that's absurd. But there's also kind of a fun little approach with this to help out with bear tribal decks if they want to try this as their commander. One of the things I hear from essentially the Tammy players of the world regarding the bear tribal and such, it's kind of like the factor that while you can definitely go full on jank with bear tribal for all the bears in, you don't really get access to some of the other cool bear cards we have in Magic, like Phantasmal Bear, which is a blue bear that's an illusion bear, or like the zombie bear we got from
Crimson Vow.
Or even maybe, I don't know, I'm pretty sure in
Cold Snap.
there was a bear in white. In other words, you don't really have options to throw in multicolored bears unless you decide to go like with a rainbow option, and we don't really have a rainbow bear commander. I mean, I guess technically Morophon is a legendary bear, technically, but really I think people wanted to try to have a 2 or 3 color commander that allows them to splash these type of cards essentially that we got from previous sets that are bears but are not mono green. And thanks to Wilson and the Choose the Background, we actually have that option of making a Gagari or a Gruul or a Selesnya variation of the bear deck design where we just throw that in, maybe even make a Simic Bear, throw in the Phantasmal Bear, and even just throw in some good stuff in that general color pair that we decided to make Wilson with the background. Like, if we go Selesnya, we're probably going to go Voltron Bear. We go Gruul, we're probably going to go aggro wide bears. We decide to place specifically Gagari bears, we're probably going to make Wilson into a cultist with the cultist background and just make him into a very aggressive threat. There's just a variety of fun little variations you can do with this, and while not really many of the Choose a Background commanders as well, the backgrounds made the list, I just had to mention this card because it's just, come on. It's a bear that you can make with a variety of backgrounds into funny things. Like, you can make the bear be a ballroom brawler. You can make him a folk hero. You can make him have a criminal past. Like, the mental image of that, of having a bear having all those backgrounds and such, just absolutely hilarious. And I think it's just going to be a fun brewing option for kind of like the casual jank preyas of the world. So, the honorary mention, Wilson. With a very refined jank brew, I may add.
Number 10.
Number 10 on this list, and this one I'm going to cheat a little bit since, well, we're in Dungeons & Dragons, so we got to talk about some dragons. And for the number 10 slot, we're actually going to have the full mythic cycle of the Elder Dragons that came from this set. All of them are very powerful creatures that have a combat damage trigger ability that is determined by a dice roll. Whatever you roll, if you're playing the blue one, you draw that many cards, or put that many counters on 2 target creatures for the green one. The red one being probably the most powerful one of the bunch, which is essentially you generate that many treasures. Cue the aggravated assault, infinite combat, in theory infinite combat, pretty much triggers and such. But I think out of all that, my personal favorite of that cycle, it's got to be the Ancient Gold Dragon. Now, Ancient Gold Dragon, essentially, when its combat damage occurs, you roll a d20, and with whatever the results is, you generate that many 1/1 Flying Dragon tokens. I just love the flavor of this. I love the fact that this can generate you a lot of dragons in a very quick succession. Now, granted, yes, this is technically a post-combat trigger, so to speak, unless you have additional combat triggers, so you don't have immediate effect with those tokens per se, unless you do some fun little jank. Like, for example, the one I can think of right off the bat is Dragon's Tempest. For those who don't know the combo, Dragon's Tempest, let's say you just essentially, you attack with the Ancient Gold Dragon, you deal the combat damage, you roll a 20, and then you have Dragon's Tempest on the battlefield. You essentially are generating 20 dragon tokens, which then, including the one dragon you have, that can deal, I can't think of the math right off the head at the moment, but let's just say it's a buttload of damage. That's a lot of damage. I think it's like over 420 is the max if my memory serves me correct, but nevertheless, you can potentially deal a lot of damage to your opponents with this combo. But there's even some more jankier ones, like essentially the one I can think of is the Mystic Reflections combo, Where you can do something along the lines of, you do that scenario where you deal combat damage, you roll, you get, like, on average, maybe a 10, or even if you get to the 20, there's a very powerful creature on the battlefield. Let's say you're playing dragons, let's say, I don't know, a Terror of the Peaks. You target Terror of the Peaks with the Mystic Reflections while essentially the combat damage triggers on the stack, and, well, you generate a bunch of Terror of the Peaks with all those what would have been dragon tokens, and, well, if we thought the original combo was going to do a lot of damage, this one will also deal a ton more damage, especially if you have, like, Dragon Tempest on the battlefield and such. So yeah, there's just a lot of really fun shenanigans you could do with this. I do think, personally, I think it's, besides the treasure generating one of the more powerful ones of the cycle, in my personal opinion, but that's just saying something. Nevertheless, though, number 10 on this list, it's the Elder Dragons, but if I had to choose one, it's gotta be my really big token generator, Ancient Gold Dragon Boy. Number 9 on this list, we go from the scariest of monsters being dragons to now being one of the more scarier creatures you could actually play in Baldur's Gate 2, which is with a companion of Mince and Boo with a giant space hammer. Number 9 is Mince and Boo. Now, is this one of the more powerful planeswalkers that are coming from the set? Absolutely not. Even some could maybe even argue that this might be the worst. But still, like I said, this is a personal favorite of mine, and I just love the janky shenanigans you can do with this. Like, the mental image of just essentially creating the space hammer, not hammer, that's like 4 situations, space hamster and such, and just buffing up the space hamster and then inevitably flinging it. That's just absolutely hilarious. That is pretty much on point in flavor, even though still the weird mental image of sacrificing your hamster is... that's kind of like a weird mental image. But lucky enough, there is also other ways you can brew around this, like maybe you can throw shapeshifters essentially at the opponent, and since it's a hamster, you still draw those cards if you want to draw the cards. But I also am seeing some people thinking of just trying to do this as a Voltron deck, where you try to buff up the hamster so big that you essentially will try to win with hamster, which that would be absolutely hilarious. You can even just go and actually just look at how this deck is wanting to be brewed, and just pretty much go essentially haste and trample travel, which does a lot of powerful haste and trample creatures in MTG in general. I can even see this being in the 99 in some lists like Agnes, the Dragon's Breath and such, like stuff like that essentially. I think Agnes was the name, if my memory serves me correct. But still, it's a really fringe one, I'm not gonna lie, but come on. You can't tell me that seeing that hamster fly isn't adorable. Plus, also on a side note, the little Boo ads they've been doing to advertise the set. Oh my gosh, that is so adorable. Anyway, number 9 on the list, it is Mince and Boo, without a sweat. Number 8 on this list, and this one is kind of the white mythic of the set, besides the Ancient Gold Dragon, but it's a very powerful enchantment, and that is Legion's Loyalty. And it's a very simple card. It just gives every creature you own, including tokens, mind you, Myriad. Okay, this is a ridiculously absurd card for a variety of reasons, like the factor that giving all your creatures Myriad, it's kind of simple, but it's a really powerfully simple, because there's a lot of ways you can brew around this. Like, you can definitely, for those who don't know, just for clarification, Myriad is an ability where if you attack with a creature with Myriad, essentially that creature will also create token copies that are attacking your other opponents. Like, you're attacking one opponent, the token copies are then going to, depending on how many opponents you have, will attack each individual opponent. So let's say you're playing the casual 4-player game, you're essentially, when you attack one of the opponents, you're going to create also 2 more copies of that creature that are attacking the other opponents. Now, of course, token shenanigans, which I like, but there's also a lot of fun ways you can actually brew around having all your creatures have Myriad. Like, one of the ones I could think of is like with the legendary dragons that we get from the Kamigawa cycle, just essentially having the Myriad trigger happen, but then they automatically die due to the factor of the legendary rule. So you can repeat a bunch of death triggers, which could be very powerful in the right deck design. There's also just funny shenanigans you could do, like with the ones we were talking about, all the ancient kind of like Elder Dragons, like being able to if you can swing in with all of them, being able to roll multiple dice and get like multiple treasure, multiple dragon tokens, multiple counters, multiple card draw, like, oh my gosh, that's absurd. There's also just some even really kind of like funnier jank shenanigans where you can do with Sundial the Infinite, where you can keep your Myriad tokens, since technically they would exile at the end of combat, but if you time it right, you can actually keep the tokens. So let's say you do some mirror bot shenanigans and get like multiple legendaries that could be very, very absurd to have multiple copies of. Like, there's a lot of funny ways you can brew with the factor that giving all your creatures Myriad. Now, granted, 8 mana is a lot, but this can be a finisher in the right setup, so there's a reason why it's 8 mana. And that's why it's also the number 8th card on my list. Eh? Eh? See what I did there? Eh? Eh? Anyway, let's get going.
7.
Number 7 on this list, and this one is one that you could say you have a bone to pick with, which is Miracle Lord of Bones. Now, this 7 mana commander is a very interesting card design. Like, the fact that it has a very powerful ability where if a creature dies, you can make it into an enchantment. At first glance, you might think that's not the best thing that happens. Like, okay, maybe I can just repeat like a powerful ETB or something. But actually, this card can be very, very powerful in the right deck designs. For example, like with a lot of stats creatures that we have in Magic, like your essentially your Thalias of the world, your Drain of Magistrates, all that stuff, like your stats creatures, having them die while Miracle's on the battlefield, and then having them be static enchantments, so it's harder to interact with from your opponent if they're not running much enchantment removal, that can be very powerful. There's also just some powerful static effects that we have on creatures in Magic in general that making them into enchantments would be absurd. Like, any of the Praetors would be just silly as heck, like an Elish Norn static effect. That's terrifying. There's definitely a lot of ways to brew around this, and I think it's going to be fun to see kind of like how people brew around this, whether they go kind of like an Enchantress, or if they go like stats, or if they go like maybe even doing something really, really janky like an Opulescence combo. I could say more about this, but let's just say this isn't going to be the last time I talk about Miracle Lord of Bones. Let's just say it's a little bit of foreshadowing. But number 7 on the list is Miracle Lord of Bones.
Number 6.
Number 6 on this list, and this one, for those who know me, I love myself some Chaos Wand, and we definitely got an upgraded variation of the card thanks to Baldur's Gate, which is of course the Wand of Wonder. Now, the fact that you can target multiple opponents with this new Chaos Wand variation, absolutely amazing. Also the factor that pretty much you could get from 1 to 3 cheap spells and just have funny interactions of just playing your opponent's stuff with the wand. It's just awesome sauce for me. I just love that. The type of chaos that can happen, like if you need to, or maybe you need to get a board wipe, maybe you can top deck a board wipe. Like, just the variation of this and just allowing for some fun, janky interactions within just essentially EDH in general. These are the ones that can generate fun stories, and yeah, without a sweat, number 6 on the list, Wand of Wonder. I can't wait to see what dice rolling / also getting some of my opponent's spells interaction combos that happen. So, let's get the popcorn and see what happens. Number 5 on this list, and this one is kind of the more cuter ones of the bunch, but also very scary, and that is the Displacer Kitten. Such a cute little card, but it's also has some very scary shenanigans with its triggered ability. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, just target any permanent, and you can just flicker it, return it to the battlefield, and it is a non-land permanent, so no double landfall shenanigans unless you have an Ashaya on the battlefield. Still, though, this card can do some very broken shenanigans. Like, let's say you're playing a lot of mana rocks, you can essentially, like, I don't know, just play a Soul Ring, tap your Soul Ring, then cast, like, a Mott's Opal, for example, bounce the Soul Ring, and then essentially get more mana. There's, like, infinite mana combo shenanigans like that. There's also just some infinite ETB janky shenanigans you can do, like with Peregrine Drake to untap lands. Like, there's just the potential for some very silly shenanigans you can do with this little cat. Plus, also, I'm not gonna lie, even though it's one of the more powerful cards of the set, I think one of the primary reasons that it is on the list is, as scary as the card is, it's freaking adorable. I mean, look at that art. Look at that art. That art is so cute. I'm probably gonna get my butt whooped by it, but it's still really cute. So, number 5 on the list, without a sweat, it's Displacer Kitten. And I am probably going to be losing a lot of games due to this card. But at least it'll be a cute way to lose a game.
Number 4.
Number 4 on this list, this one's going to be a unique card, where actually for the number 4 and the number 3 spot, they're actually going to be unique cards. And these are actually going to be cards that are from the Precon. Specifically, the Precon that I'm talking about is actually the Party Deck Precon. And the number 4 card would have to be the face feature commander of the deck, which is Nalia. Honestly, I play kind of like a Rainbow Tokens party deck, for those who don't know, and this card is just perfect for the deck. Nalia pretty much a 1 and an Orzhov, so 1 white and a black. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. Very good. You may cast Cleric, Rogue, Warriors, and Wizard spells, all creatures from parties, from the top of your library. Love the fact that we have this ability, and also it has an ability that at the beginning of the combat on your turn, if you have a full party, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain Death Touch until end of turn. Oh my gosh, this is so good for my party deck. It's ridiculously absurd. Also, it's just a very good card. Like, we have seen in the past that cards that allow us to look at the top card of our library is pretty good, and ones that are able to cast creature cards from our graveyard, very good. This is just going to be a second variation of essentially Vizier at the Menagerie in my deck, especially since I do play a lot of Warriors, Rogues, Clerics, Wizards, etc. And just essentially, once I have a Maskwood Nexus out, just now being able to play any creature from the top of my library, and then have a full party, buff up all my creatures and give them Death Touch to attack in and swing for potential lethal. Oh, this is going to be so great. But yeah, number 4 on my list without a sweat is Nelia de Arnis. I believe is how you pronounce her name. Nevertheless, though, there is a better card for the deck, for the party deck, that is coming from this Precon, which is Number 3 on this list, and it's probably one of my most anticipated cards from the party deck in general Precon from the Legends of Baldur's Gate, and that is Black Market Connections. One of the more powerful enchantments that we are getting from the whole set of Battles for Baldur's Gate Precon commander decks. It's 2 and a black, it's an enchantment, and then at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you choose 1 or more. You can either lose 1 life to generate a treasure, lose 2 life to draw a card, or lose free life and create a free 2-color shapeshifter creature token that's a changeling, which means it has all creature types. Now, obviously, the reason why this is going to be very, very good in the party deck, that's both the Precon as well as the party deck as my Rainbow Party Tokens list, is pretty much because the shapeshifter you will get from this ability. Being able to just generate a wizard, warrior, yada yada yada, etc., to help fulfill your party requirements, that's awesome. But also, this is just, honestly, just an upgraded Phyrexian Arena that just has versatility. It is a Phyrexian Arena that allows you to ramp, or even just get the card draw, or just generate board presence. That is ridiculously absurd on a free cost enchantment. Now, one of the catches you do have to be cautious about this card is that technically if you decide to be greedy and get all free abilities, you are constantly losing 6 points of life, which in Commander is not much, I grant you, but it's kind of like the college kid when they don't budget out their snack budgets and they actually spend 1 too many bucks at the Starbucks on getting their Frappuccino. It's like, sure, just one $6 drink is not that bad, but until you get to the end of the time, you're like, oh wait, I spent like $60 on coffee and such. It's kind of like that. Like, 6 points of life each turn doesn't sound like a lot, but if you do it constantly each turn, yeah, you will theoretically, you can, if we do the math here, let's say you're at full life for random reasons, you can activate this about 6 times, and then if you did, you're at like 4 life. So it's stuff like that. However, there is the versatility of the factor that you don't have to choose these options, and the factor is it can be versatile. If you just need the ramp, you just only need to activate the ramp. If you need a card draw, you just only need to activate the card draw. If you just need a board presence, you can do that. And the Shapeshifter token you get from this is a very versatile card, not only for the party deck, but for any tribal deck in general. Like, one that I can think of right off top of the bat is like for Chatterfane of all things. Because with this card, Chatterfane essentially on the battlefield, if this card's on the battlefield, you make essentially the treasure token, you make the Shapeshifter, which is going to be a squirrel, Chatterfane triggers, and you make 2 additional squirrels, which gets you about free board presence and ramp, which is ridiculously absurd. This is a very powerful card. There's a reason why the pre-order price is like around $22. Very powerful. It's pretty much an upgraded Phyrexian Arena that's versatile, and I love this card. I can't wait to play this and just do all the shenanigans that I can have with the value from black market connections. Number 2 on this list, and this one is kind of a no-brainer for those who know I like making tokens. And we did got a funny new Teamer commander that allows us to make some pretty powerful dragon tokens, which is Miriam Sentinel Worm. So this one, essentially, it's a 6-mana dragon, it has Ward 2 and Flying, and it has the ability that whenever a dragon enters the battlefield, note enters, not cast, you create a non-legendary token copy of that dragon. And it stays there, it doesn't like exile at the end step, so you get a pretty much a permanent copy of any dragons that enter the battlefield, which is a ridiculously powerful effect. Like, to put an example, like, within the main set itself, and you could probably do this in draft, like, for example, with a card like Gaynat's Astral Hunger, you can get 2 copies of this. It has an ability that whenever a dragon enters the battlefield, you create a treasure token, so you can have 2 copies of this, one of them a non-legendary, play another dragon, get all the treasures, all the dragon tokens, and also just the fact that this works with Flicker, so if you flicker any dragons with any of, like, Ghostly Flicker, or any of the variations that we have in blue in general, or even just a basic unsummon, just do that, and then essentially just make another copy. You can even do some ridiculous shenanigans where, okay, here's one auto recommendation for the deck if you are brewing the Miriam Sentinel Worm Dragon deck. Get Orvar for the deck, because Orvar will be ridiculously absurd for this deck, because the factor is it is a dragon, so you're going to get a non-legendary copy of Orvar, and since you're playing kind of like the Flicker-based strategies, in theory, you are going to have a lot of target spells within your deck design, which means Orval's effect is going to be in play, you're going to make more dragon copies, and there's just a bunch of... back to kind of like what we were talking about originally with dragon tokens with essentially Legion's army, you can do stuff like with Dragon Tempest, you can even just do some stuff with like... there's just so many good dragons to make multiple copies of, Terrace of Peaks, any dragon from like essentially... I guess we're talking Teamer here, so you would have access to Atarka as well as, let's see... Is it just only Atarka? Let me think. Yeah, I think it's only Tarka. I guess technically with Strixhaven, we do have access to the Strixhaven, essentially Izzet variation, and Simidragon. There's a lot of cute little themes, like there's a lot of dragons in Magic. You can do a lot of fun of interactions. I can keep going, but let's be frank, number 2 on this list is Miriam Sentinel Worm, because there's some token shenanigans you can do with this card. Now the question is, what is my number 1 card from essentially Commander Legends, Dungeons & Dragons, Baldur's Gate? Well...
Number 1.
And my number 1 card from Commander Legends, Dungeons & Dragons, Battle for Baldur's Gate is probably one of the funniest ones to say, and that is Ragadraga. Ragadraga, when I first saw Amazonian spoiled this card, I was like, okay, this is going to be a really fun command at the brew round. Now, for those who haven't seen Ragadraga Gorgut's bots, it's 2 and Gruul, red and green, for a human boar, so aware board, if you would say. It's a 4/4. Each creature you control with a mana ability gets +2/+2. And has whenever a creature you control with a mana ability attacks, you untap it. So it gives kind of like a semi-vigilance in some sense. And then whenever you cast a spell, if at least 7 mana was spent to cast it, untap target creature, it gets +7/+7 and gains trample until end of turn. So this one's just kind of like one of the more funnier brew around commanders we got from the set. It's a very powerful ability, just being to make buff all your mana dorks. Like, essentially, everybody was having like the argument of what's better, Arcane Signet or Ornithopter of Paradise. Well, in this case, Ornithopter of Paradise will get a stat buff for Ragged Dagger, so you probably want to put Ornithopter of Paradise within this deck design. Your Birds of Paradise, your Llanowar Elves, pretty much every mana dork or a creature with a mana ability of some sort has a chance to do some shenanigans within this deck design. Also, keep in mind the other cards that actually work with Ragged Dragon, since I think a lot of people are going to miss this, is kind of like, well, I'm going to be talking about probably not the best example of this, but remember, a card stat essentially, you pump mana in to change the mana of a specific card or to produce a different color of mana. That is technically a mana ability, so you can actually put it in the Ragged Dragon list. One that I can think of right off the bat is Crossworld Scarecrow, but there's probably a lot of better variations of this, but something to keep in mind, and just the fact that you take a look at all these cards, you don't really first glance see and actually consider the fact that they might be powerful in this deck with the stat buff. Plus, also just the abilities that Gorguts have itself, essentially making it where all your mana dorks have semi-vigilance so they can attack in, and essentially then untap, so then you could second main, just build up more of the board presence or play a powerful spell. And the fact that you can even finish off with like a powerful giant at spell, like maybe a fireball to the opponent's face, and then essentially untap one of your creatures, maybe even potentially a double strike creature, and then just get a +7/+7 and trample. That's just glorious. So yeah, I can keep going, but let's be frank, my number one card from this set, it's gotta be Ragged Dragon, y'all. I can't wait to brew around this personally. And that is my top 10 list of cards from Commander Legends Dungeons & Dragons Battles for Baldur's Gate. So, I'm grateful that I was able to get this recording back and get back into recording. I am sorry for the mini hiatus I had there. Life happened, especially when you do it part-time and you have to work a full-time IT job. Life happens, and it just kind of had a little mini burnout there. I am now going to get back to essentially just working on the content as well as the brewing labs and such. And I have a fun new deck coming from Alchemy, essentially an MTG Arena, that is going to be a little bit of shenanigans, let's just say. Nevertheless, I hope you all have a lovely day. As they say, hip hip hooray.